2024 meeting of the Westwood Select Board to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, on March 29, 2023, Governor Moore Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects. This act includes an extension until March 31, 2025 of the remote meeting provisions. This February 26, 2024 Select Board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. I hereby grant permission to Westwood Media Center to record the meeting and to anyone else who wishes to record the meeting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings. I am the chair of the Select Board. With me are my colleagues, Robert Gotti and Joe Previtera. Also with us this evening on the screen, we have Christopher Coleman, our town administrator, Molly Keene, our assistant town administrator and director of human resources, Stephanie McManus, assistant town administrator and director of finance, Tish Healy, executive assistant to the town administrator, and also with us is Alex Portillo from Westwood Media Center. Thank you very much, Alex, for being here. With that, I will turn to the chair's update. First, it is with great sadness that we acknowledge the very recent and sudden passing of Tim Chant, a longtime teacher, coach, and mentor in the Westwood Public Schools. Tim positively shaped so many young lives, not just with respect to physical education, wellness, and soccer, but also as to character. One of his former students told me today, Mr. Chant would often tell us that integrity is what you do when no one is watching. And I think that is emblematic of the way he lived his life. This is a huge loss for Westwood, and we extend our deepest condolences to the Westwood Public Schools community and to all of Tim Chant's family and friends. With that, we want to remind everyone that nominations are still open for the John J. Cronin Public Service Award. Please consider the following criteria when forwarding your nomination: leadership, exceptional service to the community, years of dedication, strong work ethic, integrity, cooperation, diversity of service, volunteerism, impact on the town, and dedication to the Westwood community. Nomination forms are available on the town website or by contacting the Select Board directly at selectboard@townhall.westwood.ma.us. Again, nominations are due by March 1, 2024, and the award will be presented at the upcoming 2024 annual town meeting. I also want to recognize Pat Ahern, Town Council, who has joined us. Good evening, Pat. Next, we have a 25-year employee recognition. I don't know if we have the employee with us, Tish.
No, I do not see him in attendance. I believe he was on tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, let me recognize him in his absence. Each year, the Select Board recognizes town employees who have reached 25 years of service with Westwood. This is a remarkable milestone and reconfirms the employee's commitment to serve the community. This year, one employee has achieved this milestone, Luigi Molinaro, a lieutenant with the Westwood Fire Department. Lieutenant Molinaro will be provided with an engraved clock as a gift from the town. Lieutenant Molinaro joined the Westwood Fire Department on April 5th of 1998 and was assigned to Group 4, where he has served for his entire career thus far. He was promoted to lieutenant on August 31st, 2007. Lieutenant Molinaro was awarded the Governor's Unit Citation on May 23rd, 2015, for his part in the life-saving efforts at a scene in May of that year. And in 2021, Lieutenant Molinaro also received a Department Unit Citation for his role in an incident in July of that year. Lieutenant Molinaro lives in Millis with his wife, Kathy, where they raised their 3 daughters, Julia, Annalisa, and Daniela. We wish to congratulate Lieutenant Molinaro on this well-deserved honor, and thank you very much for your tremendous service to the town. Next, I would like to also give a brief update on Hale, as it is on our agenda for executive session tonight. The town and Hale recently renewed discussion as to how we can collaborate to protect Hale's land, and that will be the subject of tonight's executive session. Lastly, I want to share something which is not so much of an update, but rather something that I've been thinking about. As we continue as a community to address our capital needs and the resources available to pay for them, I was reminded of an article that went before town meeting back in 2006, which proposed a 2% real estate transfer fee, which would be imposed on buyers, not sellers, in Westwood, and which would go to a fund for capital uses in town. Such an article would need to be a home rule petition, and I've taken a stab at drafting one for consideration. I raised this not for discussion tonight, but for possible consideration by the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris Coleman for the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly echo the condolences of Mr. Chan, who unexpectedly lost his life yesterday. Certainly will be a loss. We have communicated with the school department. We certainly do anything we can to help them out during their time of need. We have members of our Human Services Department who are assisting them with counseling services or being ready to provide counseling service when and if needed. So again, our condolences to the Westwood Public Schools, the Chant family, and the town of Westwood. Do have a save the date for the community regarding Westwood Day. This Westwood Day is going to be held on Saturday, September 21st. There will be a home football game on Friday, September 20th, followed by fireworks. So I just want to make sure and encourage everyone to put those dates into your calendar. Also, received some information from WAHA and thought it'd be nice to share it with the board. Wanted the board to know that WAHA was recently gifted a check in the amount of $5,000 from Fidelity Charitable Donor Advisory Group. There was a letter that was sent, but the email that I received quotes a section of the letter saying, "This gift is in honor of our good friend Lou Rizzoli and for his ongoing dedication to others. The gift was donated by a Westwood resident who wishes to remain anonymous." The WAHA chair was instructed by WAHA's Long Range Financial Planning Subcommittee to make a recommendation to the full joint board regarding the best use of the gift as part of their continuing work around capitalizing on current available funds, as well as analyzing the best options to secure future financial well-being. So we certainly want to thank Mr. Rizzoli for his ongoing dedication to others, and thank the Fidelity Charitable Donor Advisory Fund and those members for acknowledging Lou and his work. And those are the updates I have right now for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chris, and well-deserved honor for Mr. Rizzoli. Thank you for that. Turning to scheduled action, we have an update from the Charter Review Committee following their recent public forum, and I see that we have many or several members of the Charter Review Committee with us: Peter Cahill, Nancy Hyde, Council Lauren Goldberg, Jessica Cole is here. Are we expecting anyone else?
My thought is yes, but one of the co-chairs, Paul Fitzgerald, is traveling, so I'm not sure if he'll make it on. And we have John Loughnane and Dottie Powers, and I'm unclear if they're going to be able to join us.
Well, welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for being here and for your continued work. And I will turn this over to you. Oh,
Thank
here's
you.
Dottie Powers.
Oh, hey,
Dottie.
great. Hi, Dottie. Given that we do now have a quorum of our members, and we did post this as a meeting, I'd like to call a meeting to order of the members present, myself, Peter Cahill, and Dottie Powers. And as you mentioned, Madam Chair, we do have our special legal counsel to the Charter Review Committee, Lauren Goldberg, here. And we were also served by Town Administrator Christopher Coleman and Town Council Pat Ahern throughout the process of the past 2 years. My purpose tonight is to really hone in on 3 areas. As you mentioned, we did have a meeting last Tuesday. It was held via Zoom, as our meeting the prior week had been canceled, like many others, due to the 1-inch snowstorm that didn't become the 12-inch snowstorm, but unfortunately we had already canceled the meeting. So anyway, we did have our forum last week. We also, during that, held discussions on some areas with the benefit of input from George Hertz, FinCom chair, who was in attendance, and Jim O'Sullivan, the town moderator, who was also in attendance. The 3 areas I'd like to cover, and I don't know if I can be given, oh, I do have screen sharing capability. If it's okay with you, there is new language to the Finance and Warrant Commission section of the charter I'd like to share as the first item to review. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I did. Okay, so here we're within the section of the charter that addresses the Finance and Warrant Commission, specifically Chapter 7. And the section I refer you to is Section 2-1. So just a reminder, we had initially recommended that the Warrant Commission, the Finance and Warrant Commission, be allowed to go down to, initially we said 9 members, up to 15, should it be necessary, due to difficulty with appointments or resignations mid-year. We changed that to read 11 to 15 members. We received more input last week, and we had town council and special counsel review the language. And tonight we're presenting a new version, accomplishing many of the things that we had sought to do. It does not refer to 11 members. It specifies that there shall not be more than 15, which is the present amount. It enables the moderator to have discretion over having fewer than 15 members, because there could be issues of finding vacancies occurring at difficult times. There might be an absence of qualified candidates. So we put that in the moderator, whoever that person may be, in that person's hands to determine what the size would be. And we added, which was only an oversight before, but our intention had always been to include a section allowing Finance and Warrant Commission members to serve on other committees in an ex officio capacity, meaning they would not be appointed and not have any voting power. That has been a goal of ours for quite a while, to include that language in the article. Many of us have experienced firsthand or received input as to the value of Finance and Warrant Commission members in certain contexts, and we would like to have that language included. So we present that to you for discussion, and given that we have a quorum, if appropriate at some point, we may take a vote to affirm our support of this new language before going into the Finance Commission public hearing tomorrow night.
And Nancy, if I could just add on top of that, in this screen share, it doesn't show as an additional edit, but again, based on the feedback in the second line of that paragraph, it is asking the moderator to give all efforts to provide for a full complement of the 15 members. So that was also based upon feedback that we received. So trying to accommodate that.
Thank you for that. I really like the changes that you've made. I very much appreciate the point you just made, Peter, that it makes clear that the moderator should make all efforts to provide for a full complement of 15 members, but also is allowing for the reality that we've seen over many years, that often we do lose members due to life circumstances. So I think this is a great improvement, and I appreciate all of the listening that you've done and consideration that you've given this. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I would echo. I think this does a wonderful job at providing the flexibility that was the original intent of the original language. And I'm glad to see that we will allow for our colleagues on the Finance and Warrant Commission to serve on other boards and committees in an ex officio capacity, because I believe that oftentimes they are very, very well versed in many of the issues in town. And I think they can add a lot to the discussion. So I'm glad to see that change as well.
Agreed.
And Tish, I don't know if you saw that John Locknane actually is here, so I don't know if you let him in or not, but just wanted to point out that he is here.
Thanks for pointing that out, Ralph.
And I agree with Rob, Mary, and I think Nancy does a good presentation, and I think it's a noble effort, and I commend you for the time that you spent on that.
Well, I do want to.
That's one part.
I do want to thank our advisors in this regard, the attorneys on this, because they really helped us find a way to capture the input and accomplish the goals that we had. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to proceed with accepting a motion from a member of the Charter Review Committee to vote our approval of this language for presentation tomorrow night at the Finance Commission public hearing.
Yep, so moved.
Can I have a second? Dottie or John?
Second.
Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Mr. Lockney?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So thank you on that, and we'll move along. And I will stop the screen share because we don't need to stay on this. The second point I'd like to cover concerns our recommendation in the warrant article to change the town clerk position from that of elected to appointed. And for discussion tonight, because we really can't come to a conclusion ourselves, is who should the appointing authority be? And it's an either-or situation. It would be either the select board or the town administrator. There are different things to consider on each side. One thing to consider on the select board side is that the select board is an annual election seat, and the town clerk oversees the election. So for whatever that matters, is that really the right place to have the appointing authority reside? On the other hand, you'd likely, or the select board would likely have the town administrator involved in a hiring process to conclude with an appointment of a town clerk sometime down the road and into the future. So that's just another thing for your consideration. So I leave it to you for discussion and guidance.
Thank you, Nancy. So, I guess with respect, this is all about checks and balances, right? And so if the town administrator is hiring, the town administrator is accountable to the select board. The select board is a political body. So I think I personally have concerns about placing the clerk's position into the hands of what is a political body. This select board of 3 has oversight over the town administrator and thereby over the clerk. So using that rough analysis, I think I'm personally more comfortable with having the town administrator as supervised by the select board to make the hire, or i.e. the appointment, but I'd certainly like to listen to other thoughts.
No, I was actually going to make a very similar point, quite frankly, Marianne. I think that, the hiring practice as it has been thus far, with these types of roles, I would consider the assistant town administrators, in a similar type of position in terms of the hiring process that was undertaken. And so I'd be very comfortable with this being a town administrator function, because they are accountable to us as the select board. We are the co-executive branch of the town government. So I would support that recommendation.
Joe, any thoughts?
Yeah, I a couple of thoughts, Marianne. First off, I was very impressed with when I went to the MMA conference with Dottie and I sat together. I met several other town clerks, and it was an eye opener for me that we do need to revisit this. I do agree with having an appointment. I'm leaning towards, since we're going through a transition period, leaning towards having the select board make the appointment at this time. Not for any special reason other than we're just going through a transition from elected and appointed. And I think that may be easier for folks to better understand, get their hands around having the select board do it. And that's my 2 cents.
If I could just speak to this. And I just want everyone to know I'm not going anywhere right now. I have no intention. So it's a question that a lot of people have asked me. I plan on staying, and you have to look at the position as it's evolved over the years. It's very professional, and anybody that would be vetted for this position, there are certain criteria that the town administrator or whoever the appointing authority may be, that this person has worked in a clerk's office, has certifications, and is experienced, has a knowledge on not only elections, but there's over 275 other duties that the town clerk does. And to get somebody in that position that's worked in a clerk's office is beneficial for the town.
Thank you, Dottie. If I could ask Attorney Goldberg, I'd be interested in your legal opinion on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think the trend has been, in general, to move from elected to appointed, basically, as the clerk explained, due to all of the, vast and important duties of the town clerk's office. Whether that appointment is made by a select board, which, as you point out, is a political body, or by a town administrator, the shift at some point for you all, it would allow you to recruit people with proven experience. The select board, as the appointing authority, as Chair Hyde indicated, it is, the chair is a political body, and so to the extent that the select board changes from year to year, that could be something that is of concern to a clerk. And again, I think as well, there's a lot to be said for the town administrator, who has supervision of department head positions, having supervision and appointing authority for this as well. But that would not, in my legal opinion, preclude either a requirement in the language that the town administrator consult with the select board, or putting it the other way, that the select board consult with the administrator to try and mediate the difference between those two positions.
So we could suggest language that the appointment be made by the town administrator in consultation with the select board.
We have done some,
Madam Chairman,
yeah,
Yes.
we have done some research where that is the case in some communities.
we already do that with the the finance director. 10 years ago, when we developed the finance director through a charter review commission process, the recommendation was that it's appointed by the town administrator in consultation with the Board of Selectmen.
Well, that seems to be a nice way to approach it.
Yeah, practically speaking, I think there's also, almost a difference without a distinction in that in all likelihood, the candidate pool would go through HR and the administrator's office and be narrowed to a certain degree. So I'm very comfortable with this following the same path as the finance director.
I agree.
I don't know if you feel the need to take a vote on that. I hear a majority. I'm not sure. Madam Chair, we're happy to bring that forward. But if you want to give us firm guidance on that, we'd also accept that as well.
Well, Joe, are you in agreement?
I don't think so, Marianne. And I guess the other point is that I want to make sure this gets passed at town meeting. And I know there is some concern out in the community. And I think we'd have a better chance if the select board was doing the appointment with consultation with the town council and the current.
No, town administrator, Joe.
Sorry, town administrator. Sorry, thanks, Pat.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, let me double click on that a little bit in terms of where do you think the concern is? Is it moving from elected to appointed, or is it the appointing authority?
I think it's the appointing, well, I'm hoping, I hope, Dottie's made a very, very clear case that we need to go down this road. I'm just concerned that there has been some comments made about they'd like to, and you've heard them as well, that they like the fact that we elect the town clerk, and I think it'll be an easy transition if the select board's doing the appointment. I mean, it's not the end of the world, Marianne. I'm just trying to make sure we get this through town meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think, if I understand Attorney Goldberg's point, there's, a risk of a lack of continuity. If we take sort of the worst case scenario, that you could have, a lot of fluctuation in that position with a select board, and where that's a position that we do want continuity from year to year. If we can get it, we've certainly benefited from that with Clerk Powers.
No, I understand. We don't, we always have to agree on, go ahead, Dottie.
I just, being in this role for the amount of time that I have been and seeing, how other towns have transitioned, I just feel like if you have the sole appointing authority in the select board's hands, it may be a little of a conflict, because you are an elected body, and the clerk works very hard, on town elections with the select board being on the ballot. And also, let's just, for example, if there was, let's just say there was an immediate opening and the job had to be filled, you're waiting on meeting with the select board as opposed to human resources, and if the town administrator is also the one that's on the hiring committee. So I think, in terms of doing something kind of on a timely basis, then you would have to, you know, it would take a lot longer if you were using the select board.
So,
with
so
meeting.
if I could just add to what Dottie's saying, and I hope that what we've been saying all along has resonated. Our job has been to look at what's in the best interest of the town over the long term. And I think Dottie highlighting, should something unexpected happen, you have a more timely capability to move something along in the hands of the person that you hire to run the town day to day. Because we are a town, after all, that has a select board. You are not paid employees that go into the office every day. That's delegated. And you have oversight over that person. You support them to do the job, whomever that person may be. We've looked at this work without regard to the people, but with regard to the position. And I think it's incumbent on us, if we go the route of it being in the hands of the town administrator, with advice from the select board, if that's what you want to add, that we explain that to people at town meeting and hopefully gain their support.
And I want to double click, as Rob says, on something Dottie said, which is, you know, again, we are the select board is a political body. It is an elected body, and as such, I think we should stay away, if you will, from our elections, and leave that in the hands of the town administrator, the chief executive hired for the town, to handle that, so that the select board is not involved in elections in which they are running. I think that's important to our checks and balances in town. So that would be my vote, that it would be appointed by the town administrator in consultation with the select board. I think that's in the best interest of the town as far as clear checks and balances.
Madam Chair, before I make a motion, I see Attorney Goldberg has her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Yes.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to point out that there is a transition provision in the actual, in what will be needed to get from today to eventually appointing a new town clerk, should Dottie ever decide that she is done. And I think it may make sense, we could look in there to answer to some of the issues that have been raised tonight, just to make sure that it's clear that that first appointment happens only after consultation, even if it goes in the regular part of the charter as well. But if we add that as well into the transition provision, it's kind of an emphasis that that process must include the select board. Maybe that helps to kind of get through the transition.
Excellent point.
Yeah, we can do that with the benefit of our timing here is we're here tonight. It's the first round of public hearings tomorrow night, and then we come back in March. So any language that still needs updating, we'll make sure will be finalized for presentation at the second public hearing for the Finance and Warrant Commission.
Great. Well, I think we're ready for a motion on this.
All right, I move the select board provide direction and agreement with the language as recommended, that the town administrator be the appointing authority for the appointed town clerk in consultation with the select board.
I'll second the motion.
All right, roll call. Joe?
I'm going to vote aye, with the understanding that I really liked what I heard tonight from Deb and from Nancy, and you and Rob hit it on as well. So long as we emphasize the consultation with the select board. I didn't hear that earlier, so I like the fact, Nancy, that you brought that up to hammer that home at town meeting. So I will vote aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Okay, so I have a third item, and then I think our work is done. Our work is done here tonight, not yours. We did hear from the moderator last week, and Jim O'Sullivan brought to our attention concerns he has with how the charter reads regarding select board responsibility for the appointment of members to the charter. Just for reference, this is chapter 12 of the charter. It's the final chapter. It was added. I'm not sure if there was anything that existed before 12 years ago, but it was added as a section 12 years ago to require a charter review committee occur every 10 years. And as you all know and have heard previously, our charter review committee was a little bit longer than 10 years, thanks to the disruption and distraction related to COVID. So once we got on it, we've been working on it. So this would be for future charter review committees. Anyway, we had a discussion with Jim. The charter review committee did not take up the matter formally, and we're not prepared to make any recommendation at this point. We noted that we've been at this for 2 years. We concluded our deliberations of new matters in December, at our meeting in December, and wanting to be very respectful of the timeline process because we had a lot of things we were bringing forward. So I know that Jim, at least I saw earlier that he's on the call. I don't know if he wants to say anything, but we're not prepared to do anything further on that issue that was raised by him, or issues.
Okay. I do see that we have a comment, resident comment that I just want to read. This is from Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. She writes, asking the residents to give up the right to choose the person who runs our elections without articulating a solid plan for voters to evaluate is not okay. We do not need any more cronyism at town hall. The Secretary of State is elected at the state level. This position oversees elections. Why would Westwood be any different? The choice of town clerk should remain in the hands of the residents. I also would like that we ensure that the town clerk position / person lives in Westwood. I think we've addressed the reasons for the change that's being proposed. Okay, anything else?
No, but I would like to adjourn our meeting if we're officially done. I want to make sure we follow the right protocol. So if you're all set with us, I'd like to do that.
Let me just check in with my colleagues. Anything further? Hearing none. Again, we want to thank all of you for the very significant work that you've all put into this. Thank you very much. It's a huge service to the town.
You know, it's been a great group, and we've really enjoyed working together and working on behalf of the town. So thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn a meeting of the Charter Review Committee.
Moved.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Lockney. On adjourning the meeting? Thank you. And I say yes as well. Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you very much. Good night, all of you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.
All right, we will move on our agenda of scheduled action. Next, we have a request from Wegmans for an all alcohol section 15 off-premise license. And with us to present on this.
Madam Chairman, we have a bit of a problem.
Okay.
Mr. O'Sullivan reports that his chat is disabled.
Huh.
Can we let him in?
I am. We can certainly let him in. The Charter Review Committee's gone now.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Jim has put my chat is disabled in the Q&A. So it's
Actually,
working.
that's a good point. Jim, is there a question? Your chat is working. We can see your message that says my chat is disabled. So I think, without more, if Mr. O'Sullivan has a question, I would ask that he type it in. But I think we'll move on until we see something from him. Is that agreeable? Let's just see.
He goes on to state he would like to make a comment.
I see. Okay. Well, he can make a comment.
Madam Chair, I also see that Ms. Hyde and Mr. Cahill are both still in attendance as attendees.
Okay, well, why don't we let all of them back in?
Yeah, we're still here. We weren't removed yet.
I do see a comment from another resident, just indicating that the chat is usually disabled, the Q&A works. Let's see, so we have Mr. Cahill, Ms. Hyde, and are we, Tish, can we let Mr. O'Sullivan in?
He's joining right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
We can hear you, we can't see you, or at least I can't.
I'm trying to start the video. Pardon my technical challenge. Oh, wait, never mind. I know what I did. How's that?
We can't see you.
Let me try one other thing.
Oh, there you are.
There
We
we
see
go.
you. You're
Okay.
in.
All right, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I did speak to the Charter Review Committee last week, admittedly late in the game. I tried to reach out to the three of you. I did speak to Mr. Gotti and Mr. Privatera. Was unable to reach you, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings. I was proposing to the Charter Review Committee that they take a harder look at section 12.3.1 of the charter. As I read it, there is no requirement that a Charter Review Committee be formed. It says that it shall not be sooner than 10 years from the prior review, but there's no deadline. It could be 100 years from now. I had a little bit of a dispute hearing from Attorney Ahern and Attorney Goldberg, and it's not a surprise that perhaps attorneys wouldn't always agree, but if we're going through the process, why not tighten it up a little? Why not fix it so that it happens every 10 years? Some towns, the way they do it is they'll say the Charter Review Committee shall be formed every year ending in a certain digit. One town picks your ending in 6, another ending in 3. That way you know what's going to happen. Second, I think the provision should require a report from the committee to town meeting. Even if that report says we recommend no changes, I think the Charter Review Committee should report back to town meeting. And the third request I made was that the moderator, whoever it is at the time, be involved in selecting some of the members of the Charter Review Committee. The Charter Review Committee is a legislative body. Ultimately, whatever they recommend would get approved by town meeting. And I think someone from the legislature of the town should be involved at least with the appointment of some of the members. Now, it was late. I first broached it in, I think, November, but I did not attend the committee meeting. And Pat had called me the next day and said they weren't inclined to go along with it. I asked for an opportunity to address the committee. I did that last week. I did show up for that meeting the week before that was canceled. I wasn't notified that it was canceled because of the snow. I had polled the Mass Moderators Association, and I found that these Charter Review Committees seem to be unique to open town meeting types of government, not representative town meetings. And of the 12 towns that responded, only one, and that was the town of Wareham, that was the only town where the select board appoints all the members. In the other towns, there is some sharing of the appointment. And in Wareham, even though it is the select board making the appointments, the select board does reach out to the moderator when they do make the appointments. So that was my argument in a nutshell.
Well, thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. I will say I haven't received a message from you, so I don't want you to think I'm not returning a call or an email. But I do want to turn this over to members of the Charter Review Committee for their thoughts on this.
Just to reflect on things we heard last week, and Peter, if you have anything to add, regarding the language that exists, Attorney Goldberg was involved with the Charter Review Committee 12 years ago. The way I understand the town viewed the language, it was that a charter review be done every 10 years. She stood by the language as being providing the right direction to do that. So on the point regarding language and requiring a charter review committee, I think we're covered. A report out, I mean, we are going to do a report. I think that just makes good sense. The practice of reporting out to town meeting is not a common one. I'll let other people comment on whether or not we're a legislative body. And in terms of the moderator also making appointments, I think this is the right place to have the discussion. I think that's really between you folks and the moderator to decide if that is something that you want a charter review committee to review. I mean, we all understand that charter can have changes even off cycle from the 10 years. You have to go through the town meeting process of a home rule petition to the state legislature. So if it's something that the town wants to take up after our particular work is done, it can still be taken up. So I don't think we are in a position at the end of February to get something done and processed in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, and I'll just say, we did appreciate Mr. Moderator coming in last week, and when he described what the flaw was or perceived flaw was in our language, I was alarmed and concerned. But very respectfully, I just disagree with the interpretation. And I would also say that the way Mr. Moderator phrased it to you in this discussion this evening, it still is, it's not actually what is reflected in the charter language. He's not, I'm not saying he's intentionally misstating it, but the way it's framed is just not how it reads. So I just respectfully disagree that there is an issue on that point.
Well, on that point, just to be clear, I'm looking at it in front of me, and it says that the select board shall appoint a committee to review the charter and town bylaws, not less than once every 10 years. So I think that's pretty specific on that point. Rob, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just with respect to the report out to town meeting, I think that effectively manifests itself in the warrant articles that come from the recommendation from the Charter Review Committee. You know, I don't know that would be, I think that needs to go through the process of vetting that we do in the discussions that we have over the course of many meetings as these presentations are made from the Charter Review Committee. So should a report be issued? Yes. Do I think that it needs to be issued at town meeting when people are trying to decide what to vote on these various issues? I think, you know, our process of the vetting here amongst the select board in various meetings, the creation of the warrant articles themselves, the vetting that goes through the appointed FinCom as whatever recommendations go to town meeting, I think that achieves some of the objectives that Jim is talking about.
Can I reply to that?
Sure.
What I envision is not a formal verbal report, but a report that would go on the warrant. The FinCom is required to report, and they do that, and they do a great job. The warrant, when there is a charter review committee, could be included in the warrant. Could be just a simple statement. But ultimately, any changes to the charter would be approved by town meeting. One of the other flaw I saw in this is essentially the select board has veto power over what the Charter Review Committee does. Now, we have great select board members. We always have since I've been in town. And I'm telling you right now, I will not be the moderator the next time the town goes through this. But suppose we have a rogue select board and they don't like what the Charter Review Committee proposes. They could simply decide not to put it on the warrant. And then it would never get to town meeting. It's really not the select board who is going to be approving whatever changes come from the Charter Review Committee. It's town meeting. Select board can render an opinion just like the planning board could, and the school committee could. I do stress the Charter Review Committee is a legislative body because they're going to be producing legislation that's going to get voted on by town meeting.
I mean, as far as our town government, our legislature is the town meeting. That is our legislative body. So just so we're all clear on that.
Yes, thank you. I agree.
So, and the select board is, the executive branch elected by the residents. So in my view, it makes sense for the select board to, as being the elected body, executive body, to appoint the members of the Charter Review Committee. I do want to ask Attorney Goldberg just for her view on this, as far as balance of powers and also as far as your thoughts on practice on this, your advice.
Madam Chair, just one quick addendum to your question that may be helpful. Can you clarify for everyone, or Pat, can you clarify for everyone? Ultimately, the select board puts forward the entire warrant, right, to town meeting. So we have, so I don't know that this changes any of that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I understand obviously the questions or the issues that the moderator has raised. My feeling is that your charter right now does provide for a charter review no less than every 10 years, number one. Number two, the language in the charter actually right now says the committee may make recommendations to a subsequent town meeting to replace, revise, or amend the charter, which is the language replace or revise or amend was added. But I do think that what the process has been, kind of the practice has been that the charter review is bringing their recommendations to the select board for its review, and whether it supports or doesn't support. It wouldn't prohibit the charter review committee from filing their recommendations as a petitioned article. So there's still access to the warrant. In most situations, in my experience with a charter review, meaning once every 10 years under the charter, it really does go through the board because it is the board's warrant. That's different if you want to compare that to what it would be with an elected charter commission. With an elected charter commission, the select board has no role or no formal role, I should say, in presenting that to town meeting. It goes directly to the voters. So for this kind of a process with an appointed charter review occurring on a 10-year basis, I think the charter is consistent with most other charters in this regard, and consistent with the select board's authority under state law with regard to the warrant.
Thank you. Joe, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Marianne. I just want to make sure I ask Jim a question through you. That being, it sounds to me as though I agree with you, Jim, about having a hard stop. It sounds like we have a hard stop in the 10 years. Are you satisfied with what Attorney Goldberg and the others have said about that 10-year stop? Or am I missing something?
You asking that of me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, as I read it, you cannot have a charter review committee sooner than 10 years from now. Doesn't say when it has to be done, but it can't happen sooner than 10 years from now.
I guess I'd have to refer that to Attorney Goldberg to clarify that language, through you, Marianne, of course.
Please, yes, Attorney Goldberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, with respect, I think what that provision in the charter is saying is that the town has to have a charter review not less than once every 10 years. It does not, in my opinion, prohibit the town from having a charter review every year, if that's what the select board wanted to do. And it wouldn't prohibit someone from petitioning a charter amendment on through a citizen's petition if they wanted to. So I don't see it as a prohibition. I see it as a minimum floor. You know, at the very least, the town will have a review once every 10 years.
And I just ask you to, all of you, take a look at that language again. It's difficult to understand. It would be clearer if it said at least every 10 years. It doesn't say that. It says not less than every 10 years. So you can't have it within 10 years.
Madam Chair.
Please.
Yeah, so I did look at the language. Obviously, I was concerned when you raised this last week as well, because certainly we don't want to have a charter provision that prohibits that. If it said not more than once every 10 years, then I could see an argument that it would be prohibited, but it says not less than. So to me, that means that at least every 10 years. And there's always room to improve for charters. I certainly understand that, but I do think that this does set a minimum. It's saying at least once every 10 years, you're going to have a charter review, in my opinion.
I agree. Well, Mr. O'Sullivan, we
Okay.
appreciate your bringing
Thank you.
these concerns forward. I know that this charter review committee has been at work for 2 years on this, and the recommendations they've come to us with, this is the conclusion of their work. But in not less than 10 years, we'll be doing this again, and we will engage in all of this, but very much appreciate your raising these issues.
And Madam Chair, this is not a reflection on the current Charter Review Committee. I think every member is terrific. I think they've done a great job. Admittedly, I'm late to the game on this. It's a difficult issue to grasp, and I didn't fully understand it till I had a meeting in November of the Mass Moderators Association, and that was when I thought of this, and I wish I had raised it before. But thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Of course, I do just want to read one comment we have. Ellen Rawlings, 86 Green Hill Road. As a general comment, it would be nice to offer the option to all residents to speak their comments rather than be relegated to only using the Q&A. All right, well.
Marianne, quick question.
Yes.
Any way we can put Jim's concern on the future radar, or is it just too far off to be realistic?
Well,
Can I respond?
Please.
I think when we do a wrap up, we'll do our best to highlight issues that we did not pursue this time for whatever reasons, but to highlight them for future people to consider. Should they read it, they'll see what it is, and we'll include something along this discussion in it as well.
Nancy, I think that's terrific. Thank you. It's a great suggestion.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Privatera, we've also made charter changes in between charter reviews. When we moved town clerk, town treasurer, town tax collector from 1-year terms to 3-year terms. And when we had a situation at one town meeting where a party got called a quorum call to get to the second night to try and pack the hall to change, to reconsider something that was passed the first night, and we put a charter change in to prevent that from happening. So we're free to make adjustments, if you will, in between the 10 years if the need be. And certainly we listen to the moderators' concerns and we'll pay close attention to them. I think everybody in town does that.
Thanks, Pat. I really appreciate that. And Nancy, again, if we can get it documented somehow.
Or, that will be just fine. We'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. And good night. We are now going to move to Wegmans. And with us, we have Nora Loughnane, our Director of Community and Economic Development. Good evening, Nora. And Pat Ahern to present to us on this. Thank you.
So Wegmans came in and we actually had a Zoom meeting back in December to discuss their interest in having all alcohol sales license. So a Chapter 15 off-premises sales. Right now they sell wine and malt beverages, and they're interested in expanding that to all alcohol. So we had a meeting to discuss that with them, and we told them we would check with the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, the ABCC. Our licensing agent did that and was told that Westwood was allowed to issue 4 licenses for all alcohol if its select board chose to do so. So we proceeded along those grounds, thinking that that was the right way to go about this. And then Wegmans Council questioned the ABCC's determination that we were allowed to have 4 licenses. The licensing agent followed up with Ryan Melville at ABCC and was informed that although the website for the ABCC says Westwood can issue 4 licenses, they actually cannot unless the town has adopted that section of Mass General Law. So we went back and took a look at it. Pat Ahern did some research and found that Westwood never adopted the all alcohol off-premise sales. We limited it only to beer and wine. So even if the select board chose to revise its rules and regulations, they couldn't come right out and issue these additional licenses. The process would require a town meeting warrant to allow these licenses. So we took this to the Alcohol Review Committee to review the question of not so much whether the select board should grant an alcohol license to Wegmans, or even whether town meeting should give the authority to grant all alcohol licenses, but rather the question of whether this is ready to go to town meeting. So the Alcohol Review Committee took a look at it and identified several questions that we recommend that the select board consider before proposing any article for town meeting to adopt the section of Mass General Law that allows all alcohol sales. So the first question is whether or not the select board is obviously interested in offering all alcohol sales. If they are they interested in only offering 4 businesses all alcohol sales? Currently, we have 5 businesses in town that have wine and malt beverage off-premise sales. So the first question would be whether the select board is interested in considering offering it to 4 businesses, assuming town meeting approved an ordinance to do so, or whether they would limit it to fewer than 4 businesses, perhaps just large retail grocery stores, or whether they would like to petition the General Assembly for permission to issue a 5th all alcohol license. So that's the first question that the select board, the Alcohol Review Committee, is recommending that the select board consider before moving forward with this. The second question is whether they would amend their rules and regulations to treat all alcohol sales of off-premise alcohol different than they treat wine and malt beverage sales. So the select board's rules and regulations for alcohol licensing right now allows wine and malt beverages to be sold only at grocery stores, and they limit it to no more than 30% of the shelf space in a grocery store to be dedicated to the sale of wine and beer. And the question then would be, if the select board was going to entertain an all alcohol license, would that 30% increase, or would the stores then have to limit all alcohol sales to no more than 30% of the store? The current regulations strictly stress that the food store must remain the primary use of the business and that the alcohol is a secondary use and therefore limited to 30%. And then there are other specific provisions within the board's rules and regulations that they would want to take a look at, whether the grocery store that is allowed to sell alcohol, as it's now allowed to sell wine and beer, if they would be required to keep food on the shelves rather than just have a limitation of 30% of shelving. What does the other 70% have to have? So there are several areas in the rules and regulations that I think the board would, the Alcohol Review Committee thinks the board should take a look at and decide whether they want to amend their rules and regulations before moving this forward for a town meeting vote. So as a result, the Alcohol Review Committee took a vote and they voted 6-1 to recommend that the select board not offer this to town meeting as a warrant article this year, but take the time to consider all the ins and outs of making this substantial change to Westwood's alcohol policies.
Thank you, Nora. Pat, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think, of course, Nora, as she always does, did a very complete summary of the issues. There, I think people have to remember that we were a dry town till this century. And when we started, we had some of the strictest alcohol rules in the state. And I think it's served us well. We've not had problems. And I think we need to proceed with all due caution doing this. So that's all I have to add to this conversation.
So I just wanted to stress that the Alcohol Review Committee didn't weigh in on whether or not all alcohol sales is an appropriate position to take or not. They just were discussing the concern about the lack of time for this May 6th town meeting.
And I think you folks have to make a decision. How many all alcohol licenses, if you want all alcohol licenses, and how many, and what criteria. I think we need to do that. I think the Alcohol Review Committee feels we need to do that before we endeavor on getting the permission through the state.
Well, I certainly agree that we need to proceed with caution, that there's a great deal that needs to be vetted and considered before we're even in a position to bring this to a town meeting. So I do not see how that would be feasible. What is the process that the Alcohol Review Committee would suggest if you discuss this relative to vetting the questions that you raised, Nora?
So I think the first step would be for the licensing agent to make a direct, complete list of all the questions that she would like to pose to the select board for them to consider, and then have consideration as a discussion item at a future select board meeting, so that you could actually weigh in on each of the individual points and decide which way you would like to go. It would not be a binding hearing to change your alcohol regulations. It would be more a discussion of, if you were to go forward with all alcohol sales, what would you be willing to change your regulations to state?
And I think the biggest issue that you're going to have to deal with is right now you have 5 beer and wine licenses off premise. You were only entitled to 4. Do you want to ask the state for an additional 5th license?
So can I ask a clarifying question on that, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Can somebody just go over, so we have 5 beer and wine licenses here in town now. What is it that governs why we're only permitted 4 if it were to go all alcohol?
It's
population. You get so many per population.
And that's different for beer and wine only?
I believe when we went to off-premise beer and wine, we asked for an additional license.
We did.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
I mean, just conceptually, I don't have a giant issue with the idea of expanding product offerings to service your customer base. But I do agree that there are considerations that we need time to appropriately vet and deliberate. And I think time is extraordinarily short for this town meeting.
Agreed. So we are presented with the recommendation of the ARC that we not include an article at the May 2024 annual town meeting in favor of doing some additional due diligence on this. Joe, I do see your hand is up.
I'm sorry, I was muted, so I couldn't pop in there. I agree with everything that's been said. I think it was a good report. I just would like to acknowledge the fact that I think Wegmans is a very, very good neighbor to us. They do contribute a lot to the town, especially to the seniors. And Nora, I'd be delighted if you folks could work to help these folks with their endeavor. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. Well, I will entertain a motion at this point.
Certainly. I move the select board vote per the recommendation of the Alcohol Review Committee to not include an article in the May 2024 annual town meeting seeking the authority from the state legislature to grant all alcohol off-premise licenses.
Second.
Roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Nora, Pat, thank you very much. The entire Alcohol Review Committee. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
Excuse
right.
me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
You have a question in the chat pertaining to this item on the agenda.
Well, it says there are members from Wegmans in the chat. Can we address the board? I think we have addressed the question and we're behind schedule, and we've voted on this. So I'm inclined not to, seeing as we are behind schedule and we've got a heavy agenda ahead of us, unless anyone objects to that. Hearing none, I'm going to move on. Our next agenda item is the 2024 annual town meeting article discussion. I will turn this over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as the board knows, and as many members of the community who are watching know, we will be attending the FinCom first public hearing tomorrow evening, discussing the non-financial articles, which will include the select board articles 1 through 13, as well as which includes charter review, but also some of the planning board articles. But this evening we have 2 things that we'd like to recommend to the board. One is the board asked us to look into the chapter 184 draft bylaw amendment regarding the dog leash requirements. We did look into that, and we do have a recommendation for the board. And just the proposed revisions would be to change the title revised to remove dog leash requirements and replace it with clarifying terms and modifying fines. The article language revised would remove the to require all dogs to be leashed and under control while on public property, unless within an area designated, identified, and authorized for dogs to be off-leashed. The article will clarify terms to address gender-neutral revisions, such as selectman to select board, his to her, they, their, etc. Also, modify the fines to comply with the state law, Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 173A. Nora was part of that. Pat was part of that discussion along with Chief Silva. And that's a recommendation that we have for the board pertaining to the Chapter 184 bylaw amendment. I don't know if Pat or Nora, if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Nothing.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments, Rob or Joe?
I have a question, Marianne. So Chris, are you saying that we're striking to require that all dogs be leashed and under control while on public property?
Yes, the recommendation would only address the gender neutral language, the examples that I mentioned for that, modifying the fine and modifying the fines.
I'm sorry. Where does gender neutral play into require all dogs be leashed and under control of the public property?
So the revised recommendation or proposed revisions that we have for the board would eliminate that requirement that we had previously. And what the article would now include would be the gender neutral revisions, the
Select board,
modifying of the fines
selectmen.
to comply with the
Selectmen.
state law.
Yeah, no,
Selectmen,
no, I
select
understand, I
board,
understand.
Joe.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Pat and Rob. I'm just looking at the strikeout, and I'm curious as to, I haven't heard a reason why it's stricken out.
Why we're recommending the dog leash, to strike out the dog leash requirements.
Yes,
So we felt that there's some additional work that we're going to need to do. And I think there's also another agenda item that the board is going to be hearing about later this evening that also went into this recommendation.
Joe, it doesn't eliminate the lease requirements for conservation lands.
no, I just thought the folks at town meeting would get to weigh in on this.
Well, they would with the proposal, if the board supports the revision, they would also be able to have an opportunity to discuss it at town meeting with the warrant article.
That's a pretty significant strikeout, don't you think, Chris?
It is, and we feel that after there's another item on the agenda that the board will be hearing about. The board asked town council to look into, that did factor into our recommendation.
Okay,
I think there's a lot more discussion and work that needs to be done on this issue, Joe. So I'm comfortable with this revised language, keeping in mind that there is going to be, well, we're going to be talking about the other agenda item relative to the Conservation Commission, and I think there's more work that can be done to look at this issue carefully.
okay.
And Madam Chair, the other recommendation we have is from the planning board. The planning board has informed us that they have voted at their meeting on February 13th to remove warrant article 7, the zoning article, for housekeeping considerations. So that would be one of the items for the warrant that we would recommend to the board to support the planning board's vote and to remove that from the warrant article listing.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to mention, as we always do, that for residents with comments, please put in your address in the Q&A so that we can read your comment. I do see there is one resident comment, but I don't have a name or an address. So please add that and we'll be glad to read that.
Madam
Mary
Chair,
Ann, excuse me, Madam Chair, if I could also just say,
Yes.
as part of this proposed revision, I think it's important for the community to understand, we did hear what some of the residents were saying, some of the concerns that they raised. We felt that there were some good questions, and that would be part, if the board would like us to continue to look at this at a future date, we would then look at that and also look at those, talk about those discussions and some of those recommendations that were made through the public process.
Thank you, Chris. I do think that we should do that. Rob, I see your hand is up.
Yep, and thank you. Just clarifying current language that exists in the bylaws. It's leashed or under control as it currently reads. Is that not right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the recommended language for Article 4 and the
Madam Chair, if I may, I apologize. You have some comments. They've identified their address.
Oh, great. Thank you, Pat. I didn't see that. Okay, so we have a comment from Patricia Kingsbury Moore at 86 Clapper Tree Street, who writes, the majority of the town wants out of control, quote, or, close quote, on leash, meaning wants the language to be, quote, under control, close quote, or on leash. Over 600 people did not want the new language. Okay. Thank you. So we have Article number 4 language, and we also have the removal of Planning Board Article number 7. If there is no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I move the select board take the following actions: that we vote to approve the article title and language for select board Article 4 as amended. And that we vote to remove planning board Article number 7, which was the housekeeping article.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote. Joe,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you. Moving on, we have a request with respect to the Morrison Park cell tower. And with us is Nora again. Thank you, Nora.
Welcome. So the town has been leasing land for a cell tower to AT&T or their representative. In this case, I think it's Crown Castle's the current leaseholder at Morrison Park, and the lease began in 2000, I believe, or the lease might have begun in 1999, but it was regarding cell tower that went up in 2000. The lease was amended in 2010 and again in 2015. And over the years, the cell tower has been altered. It started out as a narrow flagpole. I think it was about 9 inches at the top down to 12 inches at the bottom. It is now a solid, consistent 36-inch, still a stealth flagpole, but it has changed over time. The most recent changes that were made in 2018, and at that time, the town administrator incorporated the changes in a letter to Crown Castle that allowed those changes to go forward. Now they're coming back and asking for similar changes, all interior to the structure. So not expanding the pole at all, but swapping out antennas and making some interior changes. In order to do that, though, the town administrator would need the authorization from the select board to sign a property owner authorization form to allow Crown Castle or AT&T to apply for a building permit to change the antennas. But they would also be a need for an amendment of the lease agreement. The second amendment to the lease agreement has a specific set of plans that are referenced in that, and those plans date back to, I believe it was 2011. They were changed in 2014 by a letter of amendment. They were changed again in 2018 by a letter of amendment. So we would need yet another letter of amendment to swap the Exhibit B plans out for what AT&T proposes to do now. It has no negative effect on the town. You will never notice that there's any change other than better cell service, but by having new equipment in that tower. I will also point out that the AT&T lease goes through August of 2025, and that the leaseholder is interested in renewing or extending the lease, and we are having separate discussions on what the procedure might be there if the town is interested in extending the lease. But I would ask the select board tonight to consider granting those two forms of authorization to Town Administrator Chris Coleman to sign a property owner authorization form and to issue a letter replacing Exhibit B in the current Second Amendment to the lease agreement to show the new plans that AT&T is now looking to move forward with on this tower.
Thank you, Nora. Any questions or comments?
Nope, just the welcome, even better coverage.
None.
Hard to argue with that.
All right, then I'll move
entertain a
this.
motion, Rob.
Sure thing. I'll move the select board take the following actions: that we vote to authorize the town administrator to sign a property owner authorization form for submission of permitting applications related to the proposed antenna and equipment replacement. And that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign a letter memorializing the replacement of the plan set as Exhibit B to May 6, 2015 Second Amendment to Lease Agreement with the recently submitted plan titled, quote, AT&T site number MA1273, BU number 842909, Westwood, Washington Street, MA0638, 300 Washington Street, Westwood, Mass. 02090, existing 89-foot 6-inch concealment tower, and dated October 20th, 2022, and revised through January 31st, 2024, and authorize the leaseholder to undertake the antenna and equipment replacement detailed in the aforementioned plan set within the term of the lease, which runs through August 19th of 2025.
Second,
Roll call. Joe?
aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Rob, I compliment you on making that motion as interesting as possible. With that, and thank you again, Nora. We're going to move on to new business. The first piece of new business is the Little League Parade for 2024. And we're delighted to have with us Alex Guadagno, the board secretary for Westwood Little League. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. We understand you are here to request a date and a rain date, which hopefully you won't need.
Yeah, thank you. We historically we've had this kind of towards the end of April, hopefully not coinciding with first communions for some of the kids. But yeah, this year it looks like Saturday, April 27th is the best date for this to work. Same exact format as we've always had, where we would look to have all of the players and coaches collect down by the prior Hanlon School, the now Pine Hill, and start from there and parade down the Pine Lane through School Street down to Morrison for the actual event. And like you said, we did have a little bit of a scare last time where we thought there was going to be a complete washout, but we did not happen. We were able to pull off the last one, but we would like to request, if that potentially happens this year, that we would have probably a little bit of a subdued parade the following day on Sunday. If Saturday the 27th was a washout, we'd like to do something on the 28th, at least have something where I think a lot of our vendors probably wouldn't be able to come the following day, but having a little bit of a backup to still do something with the kids the following day, would be great. I do have an email saying thank you very much, Tish, for all the arrangements and getting me on board tonight. And I sent a note out to Harley Pease, the superintendent there over at the new school, because I just want to. There's obviously a lot going on there. The old Hanlon's going to be knocked down. We used to collect in the fields out front, which we couldn't really do last time, and now the school and the parking lot are also going to be down by the time of the suggested date. So I think we want to work with the school, the superintendent there, to see where would be the best place to collect in that general area, so we're not we're safe, we're keeping the kids in a good area, we're not interrupting anything that's going on there. So I don't have an answer on that yet, but we're pursuing that to find the best possible spot.
All of that sounds great, Alex, and we do understand that our vote tonight to approve the date would be contingent upon final review by the school department, and also that you will be coordinating your plans with Westwood Police, Fire, as well as Recreation, Health, and school departments.
Yeah. So same as last year, Joe Vinci and Mike Crawford, and getting them involved and getting approvals all there. So we're pursuing all of that. Rob, it was great having you last year. We'd like to do the same. Some of you joined us up along the baseline, so we'd welcome anybody on the select board to join us that day. It was a lot of fun. We're one of the fun days in Westwood, so please come down. We're also going to have a little bit of a special dedication to the Dyson family. We've been upgrading the snack shack down there. We didn't end up getting the new one kind of approved and put forward, but we beautified, if you will, the old one. So we're going to have a little bit of a dedication for the Dyson family there. So I think all around it'll be a nice day.
That's terrific. Well, it is one of the best days of the year in Westwood for sure. So thank you for all your work. Rob, I see your hand is up.
I would echo the fact that that's just a great day. And Alex, I hope you guys have fantastic weather, and I have marked my calendar. I'll definitely be there, and I hope my colleagues will join. And Marianne, if you're going to throw out the first pitch in honor of Wakefield, I think you got to work on a knuckleball there. Just a suggestion for, I think the challenge is definitely going to be that Hanlon Field. I know it's sort of like herding cats when you've got all the kids out there. I don't know if you can talk to, the police, and maybe the suggestion would be to start right on School Street, or Pine Lane there.
Yeah.
And just begin right at about where the island is and have everybody amass. And, you're not really losing that much of your parade route if you do that. But obviously that would take closing the road for a little bit longer. So I'll let you follow up with the police on that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great suggestion because it might be too chaotic. So I'll definitely pick that up.
Well, I will entertain a motion on this, Rob.
Sure thing. I move the select board approve Westwood Little League for their parade on Saturday, April 27th, with a rain date of Sunday, April 28th, contingent upon final review by public safety, health, and school departments.
Second.
Roll call. Joe.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Alex, thank you very much, and best of luck with all the planning for what is always a wonderful day in Westwood.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. All right, moving on. Next, we have the 2024 presidential primary election warrant. The presidential primary election.
Madam Chairman, you have a couple comments in the chat that you may want to read. They have to do with the charter amendments.
Okay. Those might be better place for public comment, but seeing as you've raised it, Pat, I'll read it now. Sandra Castelladini, 54 Birch Street. She writes, I believe that quorum article is overreaching, only counting the quorum at the start of town meeting and not allowing a challenge to quorum at any time afterward. This could encourage folks to come to only the beginning of the meeting. This could mean very few residents voting on articles posed at the end of town meeting. We should not let the administrative needs of the town come first. A quorum should be required for all articles to pass town meeting. This is if we discuss Select Board number 5 home rule petition. All right, now I'm going to move on to the presidential primary election warrant. The presidential primary election will be held on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. Polls will be open on election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Westwood High School, at the gymnasium at Westwood High School at 200 Manhattan Street. I will entertain a motion for the select board to sign and post the March 5, 2024 presidential primary election warrant.
So moved.
And for the warrant to be posted by the constables throughout the town and online on the town website.
So moved.
Second, Marion.
Roll call. Joe.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Moving on, we have the happy purpose of accepting a police department automated defibrillator grant award. Chris, I'll turn this over to you. We've got 2 grants to talk about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the police department was recently awarded with a grant, and I believe Chief Silver is now a panelist. So Chief, please feel free to add in anything I may miss. The police department was recently awarded with a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to support the automated external defibrillator equipment program. The state awarded the town of Westwood with a grant in the amount of $1,537. This is just another example of department heads who continue to seek out non-Westwood tax dollar or non-Westwood tax dollars to support different initiatives within the community. So I certainly applaud Chief Silva and his department for continuing to reach out to seek out grant opportunities and for be awarded with this grant. Chief Silva, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I just echo that. The defibrillator is, such an important piece of equipment, right? And we all know about CPR, but the reality is that CPR in and of itself is not terribly effective at saving lives. It's effective at keeping oxygenated blood going through a person's system. But, people get sick and people are in need of advanced cardiac care, and the police officers there are out on the street every day. And so we were in the process of replacing the defibrillators anyway. And the board and the community has heard me say many times that we're here to help the community because no call is too small. And that applies to the grant. No grant is too small. So we needed to replace those anyway. And some of the grants that we receive are tens of thousands of dollars, six-figure grants we've received in the past. And this was an opportunity that was the maximum amount of money that was available. But we applied for it anyway. So it's just important to me that the residents and the board know that, we take their tax dollars very seriously, and we do everything we can to be as fiscally responsible as possible. So while this is not a big grant, certainly I think the sentiment of the department is important, and it's good for everyone to know. So thanks for having me on that. I wish it was a bigger grant award I could tell you about, but that's all they were willing to award. But it is something. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do that and tell the community that we were able to update all of our defibrillators and all the police vehicles, and essentially one of them got paid for by free, courtesy of the grants. That's all.
We applaud your efforts, Chief Silva. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any comments or questions from my colleagues?
Strong work.
Sorry?
Strong work.
Agreed. I will accept a motion, Rob.
No problem. I will move the select board accept the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security Office of Automated Defibrillator Grant in the amount of $1,537 and authorize the town administrator to sign any documents as needed.
Second.
Roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you again, Chief Silva, for being proactive and for bringing this to the town. Secondly, we have a fire department grant also, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the fire department recently was awarded a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security in the amount of $18,717 for FY24 funding of safety equipment. The grant is going to be used to replace hoses, nozzles, and adapters. As I said with the previous agenda item, this is yet another example of department heads seeking non-tax Westwood tax dollar funds to incorporate in some of the operating costs. So we certainly applaud Interim Chief Lund and his entire administrative and his entire team for seeking out this grant opportunity and being awarded with this grant in the amount of $18,717.
Outstanding. This is great. I will happily accept a motion on this.
To echo Chief Silva as well, there's no grant too small. So I move the select board to accept the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant in the amount of $18,717 and authorize the town administrator to sign any documents as needed.
Second.
Roll call. Joe?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. With thanks to the whole team at the fire department for pursuing this, which brings us to our next item of new business, also with respect to fire, which is an update as to the Fire Station 1 working group. I'll turn this over to you, Chris.
All right, thank you again, Madam Chair. So first and foremost, I want to, with the board support, I certainly do appreciate the board support and allowing me to create what I call FS1 internal working group. This internal working group is, we have two parts of this internal working group. We have one that's for the design team, and we have one for the OPM review team, which I will get to. But just to identify some of the members of this internal working group, we have 7 representatives from the fire department themselves, including our interim fire chief and our interim assistant chief, and the remaining 4 captains, along with 1 firefighter. We have 3 residents who also wear multiple hats. One, our own Joe Perpetera, a retired Westwood firefighter, past Concom member and chair, as well as a member, as you know, member of the select board. John Cummings, who's currently a member of the PBC, the current chair, and also has experience working on the current Pine Hill project, as well as FS2, Wentworth Hall, just to name a few. And Nancy Hyde, former FinCom member, chair, select board member, chair, board of assessors. She's also on the PBC, and she also assisted with the successful projects such as the high school, main library, police station, fire station 2, Wentworth Hall, and is currently being a member of the PBC, working with the school committee on the Pine Hill School. Also, we have Nora Lockney, who's our Director of Community and Economic Development. We have Molly Keene, who's the Assistant Town Administrator, Director of HR, who I've asked to lead this group. We have Mike Perkins, who is our Building Commissioner. We have James McCarthy, who is our Town Facility Director, and then myself, along.
I think he is frozen.
To serve in this capacity. And our next step is working group. We have scheduled, or excuse me, interim assistant chief has scheduled some tours for later this week. So one of the things that the group is going to be doing is going out and looking at some recently renovated or new fire stations to get a visual aid, and also have an opportunity to talk to some of the members of those fire departments. And so we'll begin that work later this week. We also have some other things that we'll be talking about. Once we have the OPM on board, we'll be coming back to the board and providing the board with a proposed timeline that would also include public forums. So we'll have opportunities for the public to hear what's happening with the internal worker group, report out, and to also hear their feedback. So that's as far as the design team. As far as the OPM, to provide an update on that, we did have two on-site pre-bid meetings, one in late January and one in mid-February. As part of those pre-bid meetings, there were a couple of questions that came up, and we had to issue an addendum. So originally, I believe the due date was in mid-February. So the due date for bids was February 21st. I'm happy to report that we have 5 proposals. We are reviewing those 5 proposals actually this week. The members of that review team include John Cummings, Brian Baer, both current members of PBC, Michelle Miller, who's our procurement manager, Molly Keene, our interim fire chief Lund, town council Pat Ahern, Tom Philbin, who's our energy manager, and myself. So we have, again, so in both cases, I feel we have a very diverse group, very appreciative of everyone's time, and looking forward to working with everyone on this project and reporting back out to the select board. As far as the OPM, after we evaluate it, we will be providing a recommendation to the select board at one of your future meetings to award a contract.
That's great, Chris. Thank you for that update. Joe, I see your hand is up.
Thanks, Marianne. Chris, quick question. That's great, 5 new proposals, but sound like you alluded to the date has been changed, the drop dead date for the OPM bids.
Yes, originally it was February 14th, and it got changed to February 21st. So we have all the proposals in. We had to issue an addendum based on the feedback from our 2 on-site pre-bid meetings. So for clarification purposes, and so we do have those 5 proposals in by that new deadline of February 21st.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, and last for new business is Police Department 2021 citation data, and I believe we still have Chief Silva with us for this. Welcome back, Chief.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yes, on Thursday late afternoon, I received a phone call from the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, also referred to as EOPS, relative to some motor vehicle citation data. So if the board may recall, back in 2018, I believe it was, Massachusetts passed a law that made hands-free cell phone use required. And as part of that bill, there was some language that talked about the citation data, those citations that were issued to violators of the hands-free law and citations in general, frankly, would be analyzed by a nonprofit organization, likely one of our educational institutions, the Collins Center at UMass, or in this case at Salem State University, to check for any possible bias based on race or gender. And the law is vague because there are many, many circumstances to when police officers write citations. And it's something that's requires further analysis. As we saw in 2020, there were 6 departments in the Commonwealth that originally came back with citation data that needed to be looked at more carefully. And when the Attorney General and the Executive Office of Public Safety, as required in the bill, examined those departments, none were found to have engaged in any type of bias, either based on race or by gender. And then they didn't do the analysis for 2021 or 2022 for whatever reason until recently. And so when I received the call Thursday, I was told that our citation data for 2021 needed to be examined more closely relative to the number of citations and the possibility that there may have been some that they viewed could have been high based on race or gender. During that call, I asked if they could send me the data, because this is something that we do all the time internally. We review all our calls for service and our citations that we issue, and they could not do that. They said I would have to wait until today when the information came out. I asked why they were calling now in 2024 regarding citations that we wrote in 2021, because our citations in 2020 didn't raise any concern. We found out Thursday that they thought we needed to look at our 2021 citations. So 2020, there was no concern. They told us Thursday that we should look at our 2021 citations, but then they also analyzed 2022 citations. I'm not sure if they analyzed 2023 citations yet, and there was no concern in 2022. So, quite a head scratcher when there's never been any issue with any citations that we wrote the entire time I've been here since 2013 and prior, and then nothing in 2021. A note that we look at nothing rather in 2020, a note that we look at 2021, and then nothing in 2022. Seems counterintuitive that there would only be that 1 year. But I was unable, and I'm still unable to look at all that. So I've requested the breakdown of the data. I asked what the methodology of the study was, what the metric was that they were using, because police citations are based on vehicles in movement, right? Not based on residents. So your daily population or your motoring public is not necessarily representative of your resident population. So you can't use resident population as a metric. But they didn't have that information either. So I don't have, I have more questions than answers, I guess you would say, as to what that means. But what I did the following morning is internally, again, even though we do this monthly, I ran the data for all of the citations that we'd issued from 2021 to the present. And there appeared to be no difference in any of the years. We write not a lot of citations. The motor vehicle enforcement that we do is confined typically to either verbal or written warnings. We do write some citations that result in fines, but philosophically, my view has always been that motor vehicle enforcement is about education and safety. And if you can accomplish that without putting a punitive fine on a motorist that then affects their insurance in addition to their out-of-pocket money, that was the smart choice. And so we've had great success with that. We've never received a validated complaint about any type of gender or racial bias since 2013 and to the present. So certainly not, not something that I can really even understand what the data would be representative of. However, Chief Legal Counsel that I spoke to told me, and I was taking notes during the call, that there were more exceptions and justifications for the citations than the analysis would provide for, that there had never been a finding in any community in the Commonwealth that departments had engaged in any type of gender or racial bias, and they didn't expect that there would be, based on the many exceptions to the rule. For example, when one thinks about bias, either implicit or, God forbid, intentional, I mean, both bad, one worse than the other, you're talking about officer-initiated activity. And so if a police officer responds to a car accident, for example, and somebody goes through a stop sign, responding reactively to an accident is the exact opposite of intentionally profiling or exhibiting any bias towards anyone. It's not something that an officer had a choice in. That would result in a citation. The gender and the race of the person on the citation is based on the officer's perception at the scene. And I think we've seen over the last several years, at least, where race and gender and identification as such is something really that nobody can just presume. And so one officer's opinion of someone's race or gender could be different than someone else's race or gender. The state allows for that field to be listed as unknown, which we've never done here in Westwood, because I think, that would really thwart the intent of any attempted analysis. And though, while I guess in hindsight, after receiving this call Thursday, I could say, well, gee, I mean, if you're expecting our officers to make this decision on the side of the road, and there's no way for us to know that, I can see why some departments put unknown for everyone's race and gender, but it just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. That seems like somebody almost intentionally trying to skew the data, but some departments do that. Those fields can also be left blank. We don't do that. When this law was first passed in 2018, I proposed through the Mass Chiefs of Police, specifically Chief Hicks in Natick, and through our own town administrator, to lobby the MMA to suggest that they change the language in the law to have the Registry of Motor Vehicles collect this data when a person goes to get their license. Just like they are required to report their change of address, they could report their race and their gender at that time. And that would result in the police officers not having to guess. And it certainly would not provide the situation where a police officer is going to ask somebody on the roadside, as I'm about to give, as they're about to give them a written warning or a citation, a fine citation, oh, by the way, what's your race and your gender? I mean, what could possibly go wrong with that, right? It seemed like an ill-advised plan to put in place. But I brought that up again during this call, and they acknowledged that that recommendation was heard, and I was told that the Registry of Motor Vehicles wanted nothing to do with that. So you can make of that what you will, but it seems like that would be the appropriate place to collect the data. I think it's important always in any government agency to make sure we're transparent and we're taking a look at what we do and make sure we're doing things the right way and we're doing it fairly and we're doing the best job that we can. So it seemed to me that to collect that data at the right of the Registry of Motor Vehicle, where the person declares themselves, their race and gender, and then it could be examined on the back end, I think you would get a much better look at an objective analysis at the type of citations that officers throughout the Commonwealth are writing. But, that's what we know so far. Again, I see no reason for concern at all. I think if officers were engaging in any type of issuance of citations, either implicitly or, God forbid, intentionally, that would have revealed itself immediately. That's something we've looked at from the beginning. So it's never revealed itself. It didn't reveal itself in the state analysis in 2020, and it didn't reveal itself in the state analysis in 2022. So I'm looking forward to dig into that data. And I was told by the state that when the other departments have done this, they had been able to point to reasons why certain vehicles were stopped, whether it's a cell phone motorist calling that someone in front of them is driving erratically or a car accident or whatever the case may be. But I thought, it was important to bring it up because, I received the phone call and it's information that will be released to the public. And I'm not sure, to what level or with how much interest, but I'm very confident in the work that the officers are doing. They're thoroughly vetted. They're highly trained. They're state certified. They're state accredited. We've consistently been trained well above the level at any state mandates, whether it was mental health training or implicit bias training. We've always really been among those departments at the forefront of that. It's something that's, very important to me as the chief. So I have complete confidence in the work that the officers are doing in the community. I'm very proud of them. And just assure the board and the community that I'll analyze all that data with excruciating detail, and I'll report back as soon as I get it. But I asked for that data immediately, and that was Thursday. And as of right now, I still don't have the data. So,
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we look forward to hearing from you when you report back. And we appreciate all of your work and of all of the members of your department. Let me open this up to my colleagues. Any questions or comments?
No, I was going to ask something that the chief ultimately got to, was sort of how is that data collected in terms of gender and or race? So thank you, Chief, for being very thorough and, knowing how your department conducts itself, all the training that you have everyone go through. I have the utmost confidence that you and the men and women of the department will come out of this without any question.
And I just wanted to say, Jeff, thank you for the heads up on that. I appreciate it. I've seen your officers quite frequently on Washington Street, and they do an outstanding job. But I also, Marion, sent to the chief today that if you can't provide the methodology that you're using to conduct a study, it's very, very lame, in my opinion. You have to be upfront with your methodology. And Jeff, I think you said you did not get that. That's very disappointing.
Yes, I did not. I asked for it, and they provided a link where you can request that and ask for it. And of course I did. I had a very thorough written request for all that information and the communication surrounding it. And, look, at one level, I welcome the opportunity to take a look at what what we do. I'm not offended. It's not an accusation, right? It's an indication written with some language in the legislature, which is, as we know, legislature is an effort. It's not perfect, right? It's why they call law a practice. It's a practice of law, not an exact science. So, the legislature in their wisdom made an attempt to try and, garner this information to make sure that our officers in the Commonwealth are doing the right thing, and make sure that the public has appropriate level of confidence in their law enforcement officers. And I applaud that. So I welcome that. I would just say unequivocally that not only is this not a finding by the state and the Attorney General, because they need to analyze the data also, and they'll have periods of public comment. It's certainly not, and not that the board thinks this, but it's certainly not a statement from me thinking that we have any problem. I mean, if there were a problem, we'll address it. I'm quite disappointed in the length of time it took to get that information. I mean, we get very few internal complaints, maybe 2 or 3 a year. And I can assure you that when we get them, I don't wait 3 years to investigate them. So, to get information that's 3 years old for something that, if it were true, were a terrible problem, is mind-boggling to me, right? And inexcusable. And I'm not here to, I'm sure there are a lot of reasons, and I'm not trying to throw stones, but if I went to my doctor and she told me that, I had a scan and it looked like I had a brain tumor and she'd schedule a follow-up in 3 years, that would be concerning to me, And so if there were officers that were engaged in inappropriate behavior based on someone's race or gender, I would consider that, like a brain tumor, quite serious and likely fatal. And so, but this is no indication that our officers are doing anything wrong. We analyze the officer conduct all the time. So this isn't something that we just stick our head in the sand and engage in willful blindness. And suddenly I received this phone call Thursday and said, Eureka, we should look at our traffic citation data. This is something we look at all the time. And I can assure the board and the community that the officers are doing outstanding work, and they're being very kind and patient and explanatory and thoughtful with the motoring public we deal with for the many requests that they get for traffic enforcement, with the ultimate goal of safety and education. And that's why our number of verbal and written warnings is as high as it is. And that's why we receive the very few complaints that we receive because of the way that the officers engage with the public. And so I'm very proud of them. So this is, you know, an opportunity, I think, for us to show the good work we're doing rather than any indication that the officers did anything wrong.
No doubt that when you get your hands on the data, you'll dive into it and be very thorough in your scrubbing of it. So,
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here and for
Yeah.
that report.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for the support.
All right, we will move on to old business, beginning with board appointments. Chris, can I turn this over to you?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. So as board appointments, yes. So we have, so for the recommendation for the board is the election officer appointments. Town Clerk Dottie Powers is requesting 3 election officer appointments. Kathleen Zappick, am I pronouncing that correctly? I'm sorry. If I'm butchering that, Tish, you can please correct it. David Zappick and Barbara Moore. Also, we heard from the Commission on Disabilities that they're going to be seeking 3 new commission members for the terms beginning July 1st. Typically, the appointment is 3-year, but the commission is seeking 3 residents to fill the appointments of the terms of 1 to 3 years and to stagger those appointments. If that is something, the mission of the Commission on Disabilities is to provide information, referral, guidance, and technical assistance to our residents and town departments on matters of disability. The commission meets every month on the second Tuesday of the month. Right now, they're meeting via Zoom between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30. Residents with disabilities, residents who care for individuals who are disabled or family members of disabled residents are encouraged to apply, and you can certainly see you'll be able to see the information on the town's website. So we'll be posting that with the board's support. We'll be posting those 3 separate vacancies for those 3 terms, and then be looking to have a closing date no earlier than 14 days from today.
Great, thank you, Chris. I will entertain a motion on the election officers.
all right, I move the select board appoint Kathleen Zepsic, David Zepsic, and Barbara Moore as election officers with terms to end on June 30th, 2024.
I'll second that. Chris, didn't you say it was going to be staggered, the terms?
Excuse me, Joe, that would be, the recommendation would be, that recommendation is for the Commission on Disabilities.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rob. Second. Should have known better.
Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And we thank Kathleen, David, and Barbara for your service as election officers. You can have a busy year. The next item is Westwood Media Center transfer of funds. I'm going to recuse myself and hand this over to Rob and Tish, if you wouldn't mind telling me when to come back. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So this is regular business. As we know, we have negotiated terms for payments from Comcast and license agreement for funds that we receive here at the town and then transfer to Westwood Media Centers, our local access television network. So per the agreement between the town and Westwood Media Center, we get transferred funds pursuant to Section 8.2 of the Westwood Media Center agreement within 30 days of their receipt. So with that, the funds that are to be transferred to Westwood Media Center are in the following amounts. From Comcast, there is an amount of $44,239.71, which we received on February 12th. Also on February 12th, we received an amount of $4,595.93. And then on February 15th, we received an amount from Verizon of $40,117.90. So with that, Joe, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the funds to be transferred to Westwood Media Center. Rob, is that what you said?
Yep.
That's my motion.
All right, I think we should probably specify the amount, so.
Okay, I'll back up. I can back up.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all
I
right.
make a motion that we, no, I appreciate the assistance. Accept the amount of $44,239.71 from Comcast. In addition to that, $4,595.93 from Comcast, as well as from Verizon, $40,117.90 for a total of $88,953.54 to be transferred to the Westwood Media Center. Did I miss anything, Rob?
Just per that would be per the license agreements that we have and that we signed as a select board. So I will accept that motion and second it out of necessity. Roll call, Joe.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Tish, if you would let Mary Ann know she can return.
Hey, thank you, Rob. Finishing up with old business. At our last meeting, we had a conversation relative to the Conservation Commission and the action it took with respect to the Lowell Woods. We heard from a number of residents on that, and a number of residents raised issues with respect to procedure. And we asked town council at that meeting to look into that. So Pat, we would ask for your report on that, please.
Happy to do it, Madam Chairman. So the Conservation Commission considered dog walking policy twice last year. The first time they considered it was at their June 14th meeting. The agenda was posted properly 48 hours in advance of the meeting. The agenda was amended the next day for another item, which was for 42 Mill Street. But the third item on the agenda was a dog walking policy. A review of the minutes of the meeting show that there was a discussion with public input on dog walking policy on conservation land. And after that discussion, the motion was made and seconded, and the Conservation Commission voted unanimously to adopt a dog walking policy as per the minutes. I find nothing wrong with what was done that night. There was adequate notice to the public of what was going to take place. The second time they considered the matter was on the November 8th meeting, and this was not quite as crystal clear. The meeting in question was posted properly 48 hours in advance. But the agenda item was posted as public hearing and vote on revisions to the Westwood Conservation Commission regulation, including wetlands bylaw regulations, stormwater management, and the Conservation Commission will also discuss and vote on proposed regulation for the management of conservation area. There was nowhere in the agenda nor in the legal notice published in the Hometown Weekly on 10/26/23, where language was quoted that provides with identified dog walking policy. There was a link provided that if you chased the link, you could, and dug deeper into the public meeting notice, you might have been able to ascertain that it was going to be discussed. There can be a colorable argument that that notice was only a click away. The minutes appear to reflect that there was a discussion, mostly of the signs that were put up to reflect the previously adopted dog policy. It appears that the Conservation Commission reviewed a wide swath of policies at this meeting and was trying to put the public on notice. The minutes of the November 8th meeting also reflected discussion of the signage and talked about additional work on education and perhaps further adjustments. I find that the item was properly posted 48 hours in advance before the meeting. However, unlike the June meeting that provided a clear description for any interested party notice of a discussion of dog walking policy, the November 8th meeting was not quite as clear. I did not find any malice in what took place. However, I believe it might be wise to hold a third public meeting to place to be properly posted and with a clear description for interested parties of the proper notice of a discussion of dog walking policies, for the commission to hear the public on this matter and discuss and vote on the policy and or regulations under the commission's jurisdiction. I would recommend that they do that within the next 8 weeks before town meeting. I had a discussion with the chairman of the Conservation Commission today. I believe she is in attendance tonight, and I suggest that it might be a good idea as we try and wrap up what we discussed earlier, chapter 184, to also get this squared away. It's clear to me that the Conservation Commission still has care, custody, and control of what happens on those lands, and they should have a public meeting to finalize that.
Thank you very much, Pat, for that report. I have been advised by the chair of the Conservation Commission today that they will be reviewing the dog walking policy on March 27th.
March 27th?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
None from me.
Okay, then. Pat, thank you very much. Let me just check. I do have a comment on this point from John Lawrence, 587 Gay Street, who writes, I am also writing on behalf of Duncan and Ellen McFarland of 229 Clapper Tree Street. We are strongly in favor of the Concom's new dog policy. Prior to its adoption, Lowell Woods had become a toxic and contentious environment due to walkers, both commercial and individuals, abusing the privilege. Off-leash dogs roamed freely, chasing wild animals, wading in the ponds and waterways, digging holes in the paths. Non-dog walkers who complained were told to go elsewhere, and many residents did. Some people and dogs have been bitten. Lowell Woods had basically become a dog park. As the largest and most pristine park within the Concom's portfolio, why should it be allowed to be dedicated to a small minority? It should be for everyone. Plus, how can the Concom honor its fiduciary responsibility to protect the town's natural resource, much less its largest property? We strongly support this policy and urge that no changes be made. I just want to be clear that this body is not the Conservation Commission, and hope that folks who that will be held. So with that, I'm going to move on to our regular meeting minutes from February 5th, 2024. Tish, thank you very much for preparing them. Any changes, additions, deletions, any changes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the regular meeting minutes from February 5th, 2024 meeting of the Select Board.
Second.
Roll call, Joe?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That brings us to public and press. We do have a couple of questions. One from Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. She writes, is there an update on the traffic study for the left turn signal at Washington and East Street that was to be completed by February 1? Do we have an update? I know that that was in process. We do not have that as yet. Chris, is there anything you can share on that at this point?
Sure. I believe the report was to be done in February, and I believe right now it's with the peer reviewer. Nora, is there anything different?
Yes. I can tell you the traffic counts were taken in January. A report was produced in early February, submitted to our peer review, and the peer review commenter had additional questions, and now it's back at the original engineer who will answer those questions. We had tried to get on this meeting, but it won't be ready in time, so I understand the attempt is going to be to put it on your next meeting.
Thank you, Nora and Chris. Another question, this from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. Will the FS1 working group meetings be public and/or recorded? When will these meetings begin? What is the status of the SAFER grant application? Chris, would you be able to address that?
Sure. So the working group, as I said earlier, when I identified the members of the working group, this will be an internal working group. However, they will be reporting out to the public. So there will be opportunities for the public. There will be public meetings for opportunities for the public to share their comments, thoughts, and suggestions. Will they be recorded? We will certainly work with Westwood Media Center regarding their availability to record those public forum meetings. And the other one was regarding when will these meetings begin? So as I stated earlier, we have begun tours. So we have scheduled tours for this week for some members of the working group, and we'll certainly catch up with others who are not available this week so they can have that visual aid. And then once the OPM has been selected, we will get a more in-depth conversation with the internal working group. And was there one other status of the SAFER grant application? The SAFER grant program has not opened yet for application. So Interim Chief Lund is monitoring that. We're hoping. We heard some information that they may be opening the application process sometime in March. We're just waiting for that information, or as early as March, excuse me.
Thank you, Chris. And one more question from Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. What is your expectation for how soon a reply should be sent to a resident who emails the town administrative staff? I am hearing other residents as well as myself who never get a reply to their inquiries. Is this acceptable performance? I do think that residents should receive a response. I know that our town staff is sometimes inundated with email and sometimes email from the same folks over and over, and that they try to get back to folks as soon as they can. I'm not going to put a time limit on it. If there are requests for documents, that has to go through a special document response process. So hopefully people will be getting timely responses, but I would say to, please keep in mind that we have a fantastic staff of people who is working for the whole town at Town Hall. And these are extraordinarily committed people. They are very busy, particularly at this time of year, preparing for town meeting with all of the meetings. All of this is supported by our staff. And we're grateful to them. And if that sometimes results in responses that aren't as quick as one would like, that is unfortunate, but we know that our staff is dealing with a lot on their plates, particularly at the present time.
Mary Ann, can I ask a quick question of Chris through you?
Sure.
Chris, do we send out an automatic reply when people submit a query that thanks for your question, we'll get back to you as soon as possible? Is there an automatic response so at least people know it got received?
It depends on how people send their response, right? So if they send it to, for example, if they send it directly to you at your town email address, then you do not get an automatic response. Well, you get a response once you respond to it. So it all depends on how the sender sends that information, but typically they're sending it to individual addresses.
But if it's addressed to
do
the
not have an
BOS?
automatic response unless it's an out-of-office response.
But there's nothing if it's addressed to the BOS?
Well, there is a BOS and there is a BOS email, but there is not, I don't believe there was a response that goes back once it's sent. But we can certainly talk to Victor, our new IT director, about a response going once it's opened to let the sender know that it's been received.
That was something I always feared. I think it's a nice courtesy to folks.
We can certainly look into that.
Thanks.
Okay, and we've got one more comment from a resident, Michael Volpe, 26 Delapa Circle. He writes, I appreciate town employees and the select board listening to the dog owner community and being willing to encourage the Concom to reconsider the changes they made to dog walking rules and to propose only limited changes to Chapter 184 in town meeting. Thank you. Off-leash walking has been a wonderful experience for the past 20 years for hundreds of residents, and we look forward to working with Concom to keep it available to town residents. With that, I see no other comments. I will announce that the Select Board will be attending tomorrow night's meeting of the Finance and Warrant Commission, as well as on February 28th if needed. And that will take place tomorrow night at the main library community room at 7 p.m. And our next select board meeting will be held on Monday, March 11, 2024 at 6 p.m. via Zoom webinar. Okay. Okay. With that, the select board will now be going into executive session to discuss one issue pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to discuss strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Hale Education, Inc., discussion of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were in open session. The board will not be returning to open session. I will accept a motion to enter into executive session for the aforementioned reasons.
I will make that motion with the addition that I will be recusing myself from said executive session.
I'll second it.
Roll call, Joe?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you and good night, everyone.